the situation, and we'll hear about it tonight, I think, consistently from everyone. It's almost like, it's a bit like stepping back in time. I was just saying, it's looking around the room, it's almost like watching your life pass in front of you, because we've been here before, and the situation, I think, in many instances, hasn't got better, it's actually got worse. We've got significantly new threats now that are on the political agenda, and therefore we need, I think, to take things really seriously again and talk about how we coordinate and cooperate together to confront those issues. The political background is obviously we've got a government that's been in power for 14 years, for about 14 years of austerity. The same policies effectively have been pursued throughout that 14 years, which has been around cuts, targeting, stigma, threats, and to be frank, abuse. And we've gone through all those meetings with the UN Rapporteur about abuse of human rights. None of that has gone away. The language has changed, and the presentation of the policies has changed, but actually their impact is the same. And we've still got people living in desperate poverty. I think through our campaigns we were the first to raise the concept of destitution once again in our society. That goes on. We've still got people living not just in poverty but in absolute fear about the threat from the state as well, and I think that is becoming increasingly heightened in this period. And all the old language is coming out again. And I just give one example of one of the campaigns that we waged, and that was as a result of those people who'd gone through the WCA and couldn't cope anymore, and as a result lost their lives. And only a few weeks ago, John Preen raised in the Disability News Service the issue around the monitoring of coroners' reports, where there's a specific reference to the way in which people have been treated in terms of benefits and the WCA. We just asked the question, was the promise that we were given that those reports would be monitored to learn the lessons? And it's quite clear they weren't. So in addition to all that I've said, there is the continuing complete disregard with regard to people with disabilities and the suffering that's gone on. We're going to be in a general election either May, or some of the Tories are talking about early July or October, November. So we need really to mobilise in a coordinated way with the whole range of mechanisms that we've used in the past: argument, debate, discussion, engagements, briefings, meetings, public meetings, and yes, forms of direct action. I think we need to mobilise again to get these issues back on the agenda and to seek commitments in advance of the election, or failing that, mobilise to ensure that we get action after the election. I get not depressed about this, I just get angry about it, that we're back to where we were after all these years. And there's too many people suffering as a result of that. So this time, we can't allow ourselves to fail. We've got to ensure that we get this back on the agenda, be absolutely clear on the sort of demands we're making, and then ruthlessly pursue those demands so that we actually do transform people's lives. And this meeting is about people reporting back, explaining where they're at, looking at those issues, and setting out the ideas and what they're individually doing through their organisations to ameliorate the situation initially, but also actually radically transform.
Turn now to Bryce from United Union.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it didn't sort of like miss me by as a trade unionist in the flat room. I did actually take notice of that. Where we are as a trade union, United is in a unique position in the trade union movement, as we are the only union who represent not only workers but also claimants and those who are outside of it. And so we are in a very, very special position in the movement. With this in mind, we've been campaigning against universal credit now for probably 10 years, alongside our colleagues in BCS, working together against this. But recently, going on to what John said about what we're doing, it became Unite policy in July last year that we would run a campaign against conditionality in particular, and more importantly against the introduction of in-work conditionality. So that's a national campaign. These proposals for introducing in-work conditionality are going to affect over 1 million people across the UK. We suspect that's around 1 in 10% of our membership. 1 in 10 of our membership will be affected by having to carry out work search for 35 hours a week or attending work coach meetings while they're supposed to be at work. We know this is going to affect their employment. We know that this is not good for them, it's not good for their colleagues, and it's not good for the employers. We know that the removal of the social security safety net, and I'm really pleased that we're using the term social security because that's what it is detrimental to all of us. It drives down our terms and conditions, it drives down our wages, and it makes people feel worthless, makes people feel vulnerable. The increase in in-work conditionality also coincides with the government changes to the work capability assessment and the back to work proposals. And this will increase the conditionality demands placed on disabled people to take jobs that not only do not suit them, but offer no route to progression. And we know, because we're working with academics, that what this does, this keeps people in a cycle of low-paid, insecure work, which is something we need to challenge. And this is especially more true if these people have fluctuating conditions, which are not easy to plan. What we do, as I say, we've started this campaign. For those of you who attended the Zoom meeting yesterday, my colleague Andy was there. He had a longer time to speak, so we thought we'd give you the best game. Yes, what are you doing other than that? Well, we're campaigning, we're lobbying. We've also got a legal challenge we're putting together against some of the, I won't go into too much detail because we don't want to let it slip out the back, but we're also looking at a legal challenge to challenge some of these aspects and whether they're actually in conflict with other legislation that's already in place. So we think we're doing that. I think I've used up my 2 minutes. I think I've used up my 2 minutes, so I'll pass on, Chair, to our next speaker.
Thanks very much, Bryce.
I do feel somewhat redundant as a chair, because I think all the speakers kept so well timed. I think we could let John carry on as co-chair as it was going to be at this rate, but still wouldn't look for it.
It's not that long ago where Tory MPs were posting on Facebook, Twitter, anywhere you want to look, about how many food banks they had in their own constituencies, as if this was a great thing to shout from the rooftops. It's like, what an achievement, I've got 10 food banks in my constituency. And now they're not even willing to send people from their own government department along to that very food bank. An absolute disgrace. We are taking it forward. We had a meeting this afternoon with Universal Credit, one of the directors, and unbelievably they didn't want to discuss it at that meeting. So we're not letting it rest. And if and when we do need support, we'll come to everybody here. It cannot happen, our members don't want it to happen. What I would say about our membership, our work coach members, personally, I think are probably the most conscientious group of workers that we have in the DWP, because of the front line, and I know from experience, the vast majority of them take pride in the job that they do, delivering a service to the most vulnerable people in society. And to take that service away, the only hope that some people have of food is an absolute disgrace, and our members are pushing back against that as well. So we will continue to do that, and if and when we can update, we'll do so.
But I I was made disability spokesperson in 2020. And since then, every time I've got up and spoken in Parliament, I've talked about Scottish social security, and I've talked about dignity, fairness and respect. That's what most people expect, and that's what should be a right for disabled people. Absolute right. As you can see, I'm fully abled. I sometimes feel guilty because I can't always understand completely the difficulties that people have. But no matter what happens in the forthcoming election, I can assure you I'll continue to fight on disabilities and for disabled people. I wanted to say that the WCA, I have been trying and I've been speaking to Scottish Government ministers, but they can't get a response from the UK government on WCA in Scotland, and I don't know what the situation is in Wales. And Northern Ireland is an entirely different case in terms of devolution, I know that. But we really need to actually focus on good practice, wherever it is, and to move it forward. I'll sit down, I'll shut up, I forgot cards. My name is Marion, M-A-R-I-O-N, and you can find me easily because I'm the only MP called Marion. I did say to John, I can't stay to the end, I'm really sorry, but I need to try and get re-elected and I've got a meeting to work on.
Thank you very much.
And it's been a really good, interesting meeting. Just one thing, a couple of things I'd like to say. One is about ableist attitudes, which sort of are enshrined into the benefit system, and we need to do more awareness on sort of eliminating ableism, because everything sort of starts about what you can do with that. You know, it's sort of from an able-bodied person's perspective. That needs to be eliminated. Also, the current benefit system as well is, as we know, based on the medical model. And I know that hasn't been mentioned this evening, and this meeting's not really necessarily about that, but it is something that we need to bring back to our own communities, to get people, and the people who we work with and socialise with and so on, to start get them to think about the social model.
The purpose of the meeting last night and today was to just get people together again, to talk through the issues, then to talk through how we go forward. But the key element that's come from, I'm sure, I wasn't there last night, I'm sure came from last night, what I've heard also, but the key element is just how we coordinate and plan now, because we're in quite a critical period in the last election and after that election. So I think when we leave the meeting and we talk to people, we should say something really positive to them about what these two meetings were about. I attended the first meeting in North London to set up DPAC, and the conversation that we had then was that at that point there was no disability movement in this country on any scale undertaken by people with disabilities themselves. So that was the first real statement of nothing about us without us. It was a really, and we came out and talked to people and said, you know, there's a disability resistance movement that's been established in this country for the first time ever. So I think when people go and say, what was this meeting about? I think it is about the relaunch of a resistance movement on disability. I think we should say that and be positive about it. And say, actually, we've just relaunched the disability resistance movement as a result of the number of meetings and discussions that are taking place. The second thing is, I actually, Paula mentioned it, I actually do think organising a conference is absolutely critical now, where we get numbers in that room from all the different aspects of the movement. We've got the campaigning organisations here, the voluntary sector, we've got the trade unions here. There's lots of other links now that I think need to get into the same room as everyone to talk about how we build the resistance movement. I say one other thing. The point that Austin made about the regional inequalities, I think was really key. I actually do think replicating some regional and national meetings like this would be quite important. Ellen mentioned Andy Burnham up in Manchester and elsewhere. There's a whole range now of regional political leaderships now. Jamie just from the North East, Steve in the... If you look around the country, there's a regional structures, political structures that are being established. If we could get the resource or see what volunteers could do, actually organising a few regional meetings like this on this sort of scale, where we're bringing groups together with activists and a number of the either who can MPs in their own regions, or if not, at least local councillors and regional mayors, I think, would be important. The next point really was, it is about building more links. I think when we leave the meeting now, we're all going to have to come back and think through what other trade unions we need to be working with. And PCS, Unite and others, and NHA, they've been working really hard. The TUCG, the Trade Union Coordinating Group, is a vehicle for 11 unions we can go and talk to as well. Just in many ways, we're pushing out an open door. Any of you have done lots of work. We're pushing out an open door. It's just going to them and say, by the way, we've relaunched the resistance movement. We need you to be part of that and contribute. A few Bob have done this as well. In terms of helping the organisation develop. The next issue then is to put, like I said, I thought actually action is important. It is important. So I think getting the word out about the day of action on the 4th is critical now, because I think that could be key in mobilising, just to demonstrate we're back again on the move. And actually the link up on the budget day itself with the other organisations is key as well. So I think demonstrating a presence is important. Just on final couple of points, on political strategy, the manifesto's there. On Ellen's point though, it needs boiling down some of the elements that you'd almost call into emergency programme now. It's almost a government hitting the deck running, these are the emergency points we want, and then we'll come and talk to you about the other aspects of it over a period of office. And I think some work can be done on that. And then I think it's a matter of targeting MPs, councillors and mayors, and that's looking systematically about what support we've got and how we can build upon that. Can I say one other thing as well, and it might be beyond us at the moment, but have a think about it. I think having a national hustings before the general election would be absolutely key, but not one where it's just a few people in a room like this, but trying to build a mass hustings where you're inviting the political parties to come along, but you do it on a mass basis of, a large venue rather than just a few of us sitting around listening to try. It's more about demonstrating to them there's a movement here that you're going to have to deliver to, and you'll be held to account to in that. So I just think it's a way of it. The other thing, in terms of legislation and the lobbying, we're quite good at that. We've built it up over the years. But I don't know, was it Ellen or somebody who mentioned, on some of these aspects in the manifesto, it's about the UN, HR, and some of these aspects, we can start drafting some of the legislation and put on the shelf very easily now, so it's there available for any government that would be after the next election. So the incorporation of the UN stuff into it, it's relatively easily done, and we can help on that. There'll be a number of people, MPs, who'll be willing to help in drafting that with the clerks of the House here. Finally, on the communications, Rona's right, it's always bloody difficult, isn't it? But the way we've got published in the past is around the actions, it is around the report launches, it is around the legal challenges, etc. And it's just a matter of making sure there's a hit going out there on a regular basis from either a coordinated way or the individual groups getting out there and demonstrating that demonstrating we're raising issues and taking actions that literally can't be ignored after a bit. And I think that's where we've got to. I also think, I know social media is relatively restrictive and it's a pain sometimes, but in terms of social media, we are effective on social media, to be frank. And I think it does have, I know, particular constituency of interest. But the media feed off the social media now. So I think it's quite invaluable for us. And also, I wouldn't underestimate word of mouth, you know. I think going back to our areas and holding open meetings as well is quite critical. And even getting, you know, individual members of our groups in the election campaign to demand a public meeting in a particular constituency of a particularly relevant member of parliament that might be on the front bench at the time, so I'm not naming anyone, but that sort of action I think could be quite influential. They're just some of the ideas you've discussed and put together, but I'm really enthused and I'm excited again. I feel like I need just get out in the streets again. It's important. But I think that there's so many people in this room buzzing with ideas, and actually we are truly representative, really, on a whole range of from different sectors, from different regions and different aspects of the world. I think we're back in the game again, actually. I'll shut up.